John, you said you were born in
13.
1913 in Farnham, Nebraska. And so did you grow up with farm chores?
I sure did.
Mm-hmm.
Milked cows, worked out in the field, rode horseback, went to a little school. It's altogether different then than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't too bad at that time, but I have a son that's in the school system and they're trying to improve the system, and I realize now how inadequate our teachers were then and compared to what they're doing now. And he says they're still not doing right.
Did the Dust Bowl days hit you on the
Sure
farm
did.
there?
The dust blew so hard at times that you couldn't even see the drive down the road. In noon, people was driving with their lights on in their cars. And we had some fences kind of out of a draw, and the dirt blew down in there, and the dirt covered the fence.
Wow.
Mowing like that. And it wasn't good.
Did you lose all your crops?
Yeah.
1 year or more than a year?
More than that.
More than that. Wow. Wow.
Yep. And then there wasn't anything. The grasshoppers ate it.
Oh, gosh.
So I said, this isn't for me.
Yeah. Now, during those years, did you just, your family survive on your own gardening? Or?
On a farm, we raised our own meat. We had our own hogs. We butchered 2 hogs a year and beef a year. And my mother always raised big gardens. She canned a lot of stuff. She canned a lot of meat. And, well, we had to buy stuff too, but most of them we could raise ourselves.
And if you butcher 2 hogs and a steer each year, how do you keep the meat? Do you can most of that or freeze it?
They canned a lot of it, and they cured a lot of it. They had their own. You could buy what they call Morton salt. You could cure your hams.
Mm-hmm.
And well, we butchered in the wintertime. And after we butchered, well, I come along and we had a house that we kept all these things in, kind of an open house. And we would put the meat in there, and it would freeze and it'd stay frozen a while, and it'd start thawing out. Dad was a pretty good meat cutter, and so he'd go in and cut up all the meat and made our own sausage and had our own steaks. And of course, we sort of fed these animals a little bit heavy before we butchered. Good old corn, I tell you.
All right.
You can't beat corn for pork and beef.
Yep. All right. And so you moved away from Farnham in when you were 22 years old.
November of
About 35?
36.
36.
Yeah, November 36.
Uh-huh.
Come to California. I had to have an uncle who lived in L.A. I knew right where I was going.
Were you married by then?
Oh, yeah, we
Yeah.
got married. And so we got out here, and it's a kid from a country town, you know. Don't know too much about business, but I found a job at General Motors assembly plant in Southgate, California. And these assembly plants where everything was coordinated, I was in maintenance because that's what I understood. And to see all of these things moving was quite a thing for a kid that just come off the farm. Everything was coordinated plant-wise.
What kind of cars or trucks were they making?
General Motors, Pontiac, Buick, and Oldsmobile. This is when the Buicks had the great big, this is the Master, 8 cylinders in line.
Okay. Oh man, inline 8.
Yeah, big cars, Roadmasters.
Uh-huh.
Buick Roadmaster.
Very good. Very good.
That was the top of the line.
Now, somewhere along the line, you ended up doing plumbing work. How did that happen?
Well, I was working at General Motors, and things got a little bit rough, and they laid you off. You don't have a job. Well, I was looking around trying to find work, and my parents were living with me too. Dad was quite elderly, and so we was taking care of them. And getting days work now and then, and Dad was raising rabbits and was making out. But a friend of mine come around and said, I got a job as a plumber's helper if you'd like to go to work as a plumber's helper. And I said, well, I'll take any job you got. Okay, you go at this address. And that's how I got started in plumbing, through a friend of mine.
Very good.
And So evidently I had a natural affinity for plumbing because it came easy. And so I stayed with that. And I went back to General Motors when they started making cars again. And then during the war years, when I attacked on Pearl Harbor, well, we built a house in Compton, and there was, right behind me there was another fellow built one, and he was one of the upper crust of the Navy down at San Pedro. And he was just, well, like a parent to me, and he insisted I take a civil service examination, which I didn't want to, but I did anyway. And then when the war broke out, well, I got called in the Navy, and went down to San Pedro and got oriented and went out to Norco. And I was out there in Norco all during the war years for 5 years, Navy hospital. I think I was told one time that was the second largest Navy hospital during the war. They had 5 full 4-stripe captains out there. So it was the biggest place that's still out there, but it's not empty. Beautiful place. And this place that they bought, a millionaire decided that he wanted to build a place for Hollywood people. And he built a tremendous place. It's a castle, really. We brought guys in from Italy to put down the stonework and everything, and everything is decorated, and so that turned out to be the Navy hospital where I was at for 5 years. Beautiful place.
During your early years of marriage, what did your wife like to do? Was she a homemaker?
Well, she was a German gal with a lot of industry about her, and she after the war, well, she took care of, we had her 2 kids during the war, and after they got older, well, she decided she had to do something. So, well, we built a house in Corona. She shingled the house. Or Corona, yeah, we were in Corona, and she shingled it there. And oh yeah, we first built a house in Compton, and it's pictures right up there. And she shingled that house. She was my partner. She was our little girl was still nursing at that time. She'd be up shingling, and then she'd get hungry. She'd go down and take care of her, and go back up and hammer nails to keep. I'd lay the shingles all out for her, but she had to be a partner.
Very good.
And she was a partner.
Very good.
All through our life, she was my #1 partner.
Wonderful. What do you remember of the Hess family, her family?
Well, there was 13 kids.
Oh my gosh.
She was the 7th daughter. She knew how to live with people. And they were Germans, but one of her brothers fought on the American side he was over in Italy during the war.
What about your parents? Who are your parents?
Well, my grandparents, well, the name comes from England before the Revolutionary War. And they kind of settled on down, and my granddad was raised in Indiana, and my grandmother from a very affluent family in, I think it was Louisiana, down south there. And during the war, when he was a soldier, I think they met down there, and they got married, and she inherited acres and acres and acres of land from down in there. And the Hatcher family was a very prominent family at that time, and I didn't know this till later on, but it worked out all right. Well, I was always curious though, because they lived in Indiana, and they decided to go to Nebraska. So they hitched up their own oxen and a covered wagon, and they come to Nebraska. And Granddad bought a half a section of land for Grandma's money, and he put all the buildings on it, and that's where my sister and I were born. Granddad was a Civil War veteran who I knew very well. He died when I was a junior in high school. He was wounded in the hip by a .50 caliber lug during the war. He was always proud of that.
And how about your parents? What are your parents?
Well, my dad I think he got to go to the 3rd grade in school. And my mother was on her own when she was about 9 or 10. Her dad died and her mother remarried, and there's a problem, I guess. So she went to working for families at that young age. And well, that's she grew up to be a professional cook. She cooked at hotels at one time, and met Dad, and they got married. And Dad was a farmer.
And what are their names?
John and Lily.
Another John.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, my granddad, mainly they had, I think they had around 12 or 13 kids. I don't remember just how many boys and how many girls, but they made all of their kids, their middle initial was C. So my middle initial was Cecil, and I went by Cecil back in Nebraska.
Okay.
Because I got my dad, but come out here might cause confusion, so I grew up with Cecil. My wife didn't like Cecil anyway, so, so I went by the name of John.
Great, very good, very good. Now, when did you become a part of the First United Methodist Church of Riverside? Or
I can't
at the
remember
time,
the date.
First Methodist, but has it been?
A long time ago. Well, it was, they built Fellowship Hall first, you know, and then we joined it during the Fellowship Hall. We joined the church then, and then they built a sanctuary. I was on the building committee.
Oh,
at that
great.
time. And Ed Reeves, probably the name was familiar.
Name is familiar,
He was the
yes.
minister of what was being built, so we had meetings ever so often. And I'm saying this in all respect, but we would go to the meetings and Ed would tell us what he wanted, so okay, that's what we want. So the meetings were mostly to say, okay, we'll go with Ed. But he
Great.
knew what he was doing, and he done a good job, because that sanctuary is due to Ed's endeavors. Now, they didn't have enough money to start with to build a tower. And we had a member that was in finances here in Riverside, and he donated the money to build a tower.
Wow.
And they got a bid on it, someone, I forget how many thousands of dollars now, but to build the tower, the guy took the contract on it, and he got the tower all built. Why, he found out that he had several $1,000s he didn't spend. He was very forced to put it up, so he turned it back over to the church, which is, I've been in the contracting business myself. You don't do that.
I've never heard of that. That's great.
But he did.
That's great.
Yeah, he turned it back to the
Wonderful.
church.
Very good. So you've probably been a part of the church for almost 50 years here.
Oh, I'm sure. 'Cause,
I think I don't remember if it was the sanctuary went up in 53 or if it was the
Sometime
Fellowship
around
Hall
there.
in 53, but somewhere in the early 50s.
well, we never went to that till the Fellowship Hall was built. We
Yeah.
never saw the one that burned down.
And then is Riverside any different than when you first moved here?
Well, it sure is. It's grew up into a city now.
Mostly orange groves when you came here?
Well, yes, Orange Grove, Corona was mostly lemons.
Okay. I can picture you and your wife. And then, who is this one right here?
That's my grandson, Tom McKenzie, and his wife and kids. And this is my son and his wife is on his right, and it's their second marriage for both of them. The 2 daughters are hers, and the 3 on the back is his.
And then you have this this wonderful display up here.
Sure, my daughter Sharon set that up.
It's just amazing.
Incidentally,